And it looks like we are now live on Facebook. So thank you everyone for joining us today on our session on how to audit proof your business. We will be going through some key aspects of the audit process, as well as talking specifically about some of the tools that we provide for our clients to help ensure that they are protected. So a little bit before we get started about what the agenda is going to look like, I want to talk about the actual audit process, what the reverse onus is, some top audit triggers, what to expect in an audit, how to prepare for your audit. Of course, we're going to get into the meat of how to actually audit proof your business with Receipt Bank and how to get your free Receipt Bank account that is available to all clients of CPA 4IT. Then we're going to be talking about some warning signs, and then of course damage control and what to do beyond the audit process. So my name is Andrew Wall. I'm the managing partner at CPA 4IT Professional Corporation. We are an accounting firm specializing in independent contractors. We are a winner of the top 50 cloud accountants in North America for 5 years in a row. What that means is that we are a digital cloud first accounting firm, enabling us to work completely remotely. So I'm working from my beautiful home studio today. Obviously, those of you who are clients know that we've been able to work through this crisis completely digitally, thanks to our reliance on technology and our use of tools like Receipt Bank and QuickBooks Online, which we're going to be talking about today. So without further ado, let's talk a little bit about what the reverse onus is. This is a really important thing to know and understand about the audit process. What this basically means is that the burden of proof falls on you, the taxpayer, and that CRA's assumptions are presumed correct, and that the taxpayers have to disprove any accuracies or assumptions. And the onus only shifts in very, very limited cases. So you have to be proactive and make sure that you're documenting your processes and that you have the information to be able to provide auditors. The one real exception to this is statute barred information. So after 3 years of a notice of assessment, not 3 years from data filing, not 3 years from the actual year end, but 3 years from the notice of assessment, information becomes statute barred, and it's very difficult for CRA to be able to open up those year ends unless they can prove fraud, and they have to actually be able to prove that there was carelessness, neglect, willful default, or fraud. And it's very difficult for CRA to go through that. So it's very rare that statute barred years are opened up. But it is important to know that outside of those statute bars years, the onus does reside with the taxpayer, and you are responsible for demonstrating that your information is accurate and correct. And that's because the assumption is that you have the information, not CRA. Oh, going the wrong way here. I'll get this going, I swear. There we go. So let's talk a little bit about some of the top audit triggers, which is the number one thing that I think people ask us about. What's going to cause an audit for me? What are the things that I can do to help avoid putting my company at risk? Some of the most common things are things like routine audits that just happen randomly. They are more common with new filers, but they can happen to just about anyone across the spectrum. Of course, significant year-over-year variances in income and expenses can cause triggers. We run a benchmarking analysis for our clients to show them how they compare to the average and the median. CRA is running a very similar type of analysis. They are also doing things like analysis to make sure that numbers are real numbers. So we don't like to use round numbers, and we don't like to have significant variances. One other thing to note is no variance at all can be just as much of a trigger as a significant variance, as CRA does expect some ebb and flows amongst different accounts. If you have any unusual deductions, things like charitable donations, which tend to go through more increasing scrutiny than other expense categories, that could be a potential trigger for you. We do recommend for our clients that if you're doing charitable donations, you do them under the personal side, not through the corporation, because it does have the potential for greater scrutiny inside the corporation. The other big thing is expense claims by employees. We have seen in the past individuals who will pay themselves in the form of a consulting fee, and a consulting fee could then have expenses deducted against it. That's going to be a potential trigger for an audit, as well as T2200s on employees, especially non-arm's length employees, are high trigger issues. So the goal of a self-employed individual is you having your expenses inside your corporation, and your personal tax return is as simple and clean cut as it could be. It's either just a straight T4 or a straight T5. Requests for amendments on returns, recurring losses. These are types of things that can, again, trigger unnecessary risk for the corporation, particularly when we look at recurring losses. This is not an uncommon thing for independent contractors that may take a year or two off to go work at a permanent role. It doesn't mean that you're going to be audited for that. Typically, CRA does acknowledge that there will be losses for about 2 to 3 years before it triggers their attention. But after 3 years, there's a very high probability that CRA is going to want you to demonstrate that there is a realistic chance for profit in your business. Of course, complaints coming through workers or the regular support hotline can trigger that. Demographic discrepancies. Now, this is one thing that I think is really interesting. When we went through some training on how to mitigate risk within an audit, one of the things the presenter told us that was really interesting are the ways that CRA is doing analysis and looking at, does your income from your corporation support your lifestyle? Do you live in $1 million mansion but only making $10,000 a year? Then they're going to be looking to see what's going on, and if there's something unusual, and that can trigger an audit. Other things that have come up that are really interesting, not really related to the independent contractor market, but definitely to the contractor market as far as those contractors working on renovating your homes, is CRA went through a process of a request for information from Home Depot. And they were using Home Depot credit cards as a way to audit contractors that are working on your homes, which are typically a high cash business, and making sure that they were demonstrating enough revenue and sales to support that volume of expense transactions. So really interesting the way CRA is using data in this new world to be able to identify audit risks. There's also certain CRA initiatives and demographic, CRA initiatives and third-party information lead programs. Most importantly on the CRA initiatives is probably personal service business risk. As you guys can imagine, right now, going through this crisis, there is not a lot of focus on audits. In fact, all audits have been put on hold. We do expect that once this crisis is through, those audits are likely to come back in full force, if not even greater force, because if we look at CRA as a type of business, audits is one of the ways that they inject a lot of cash flow into the government relatively quickly. The other thing is failure to provide requested information. This is a common one. If they do a desk audit and they ask you for a couple key pieces of information and you do not provide that, you can be rest assured that a full-blown audit will take place. And then, of course, lastly is sort of insolvency proceedings. So when you're going through a bankruptcy, there's a higher propensity to being audited. Now, the big question a lot of people ask me is how often do people get audited, and what is the probability of me being audited? And I would say less than 1% of the population gets audited. So while the threat is very real and very significant, the risk is still relatively low. You should expect that at least once in your lifetime you will be audited. And of course, if you don't provide accurate information or don't do a good job in dealing with an audit, you could put yourself at risk for recurring audits. So one of the things to be aware of is keeping accurate information to make those audit processes as smooth and seamless as possible. So what should you actually expect if you're going to go through an audit? So as we said earlier, the reverse onus informs every aspect of the audit dynamic, which means effectively CRA is going to be requesting information, and your job is to provide that information in a timely way and make sure that that information is as accurate as possible and as easy to follow as possible. The easier you make the auditor's job, the quicker they go away, is basically the fundamental principle of all audits. Most audits tend to go off the rails when the auditor is either ill-informed or confused, or in the worst case scenario, suspicious about information that you have provided. So you want to alleviate all of those risks and all of those concerns by providing as accurate information as possible, as quickly and as effectively as possible. Because when there's incomplete information, they're going to draw a line between the dots. And in most cases, they're going to make negative inferences, not positive inferences. And they're going to make assumptions that negatively impact your business. So it really comes down to maintaining proper records. We're a big believer that Receipt Bank is the #1 tool to help you do that. And we're going to be talking about that in a second. We also want to ensure that you've got some form of electronic filing management, control, storage, and access. Again, we believe Receipt Bank is a great tool for that. It doesn't have to be the only solution, but having some form of electronic file management and control is essential. So between the two tools that we provide you, which is a ShareFile account, which is a secure online digital storage environment, and Receipt Bank, the ability to scan and sort receipts, you've got all the tools at your fingertips to be able to do that. We also want to make sure that we're segregating sensitive and privileged materials so that it's protected from unprying eyes and employees and those types of things. So preparing for the audit, what do we need to do? So the starting point is basically if they ask for it, you need to provide that information to CRA. And that's typically what's going to happen. You're going to get a letter from CRA requesting a number of pieces of documentation, and you are required to provide that. Specifically, the two items in the Income Tax Act are Section 230 and 231, which says records and books of accounts sufficient to enable the taxes payable or taxes required to deducted, withheld, or collected to be determined is the information CRA is enabled or allowed to request, and they have the right to inspect records of any person for any purpose related to the administration or enforcement of the act. So we have seen situations where we've gone through audits where they have asked for personal bank accounts and information related to shareholders and employees. And again, due to the reverse onus, if they ask for it, you have an obligation to provide it. Now, sometimes we are able to resolve a lot of these requests with a conversation. We've had situations where they've asked for QuickBooks accounts and QuickBooks Online access and those types of things, and QuickBooks files, to which we usually say, can we help you by providing whatever reports that you need to be able to make sure that we're giving them the information that they want without opening up the kimono fully. So things that might be included are receipts, invoices, banking documents, logs, and appointment books. One of the big things that we're seeing audited more so than any other expense category right now is automobile expenses. You are required to keep a logbook for your automobile expenses, including a mileage log. Very few people, or not enough people, are keeping those, and this is causing issues in the audits. And CRA has recognized that and seen this as a great opportunity to be able to collect a whole bunch of taxes on expenses that you may be very well legitimately entitled to, but because you haven't, pardon me, because you haven't kept sufficient documentation, you're at risk for losing those deductions. Of course, minutes and resolutions, which we do provide for all of our clients, are important. If you are working with another accountant who doesn't provide directors, shareholders minutes, and resolutions, these are required documents. We do provide those at CPA for IT, which is actually one of the things that is above and beyond what a lot of typical accounting firms do. And if you don't have those for past records, you will need to get them created. oftentimes that means going to a paralegal to get those created for you. Of course, payroll records, sometimes emails and notes and memorandums, and they can have access to any electronically stored material. And of course, the actual working papers and information related to the specific company. So you do have an obligation to retain these records, and that extends to inactive corporations, holding companies, trusts, and any person required to file a tax or GST HST return. These must be legible and accessible. So oftentimes the questions we get about digital documents, what's the requirement? Digital documents are considered valid source documents as long as they're legible and reproducible. That means that you need to have both the front and the back if it's a double-sided document, like particularly checks and those types of things, and that the records must be kept in Canada. There is a lot of flexibility on this. We have never really run into any issues with people using things like Dropbox or any other storage that are outside of Canada, as long as the information is accessible within Canada. So that's not something that CRA has ever, that we've seen, come down on, but it is a potential issue. Now, there is a 6-year retention period in practice, but in reality, this can be significantly longer. And the reason that it can be significantly longer is because if you imagine you go back 6 years ago and you had a home loan, well, then that home loan, the documentation for the purchase of that home might be required. And that home loan purchase agreement might be from 10, 15, 20 years before that. So it's all the information related to the 6-year filing period. Now, as I mentioned earlier, there is a statute barred period. So after 3 years, they can be statute barred, but that doesn't relinquish your requirement to keep that information for 6 years from the last taxation year for which the records relate. There, as we mentioned, long-term purchases like houses, fixed assets, anything like that, you've got to keep those around permanently. We do tend to create a permanent file folder in our share file accounts where we recommend everyone keep those long-term documents that don't relate to a specific year end. Now, when it comes to digital documents and even physical documents, should you purge some? Yes, potentially. Any redundant documents, any privileged material that's in multiple formats, any drafts. This drafts are one area that can really get you in a lot of hot water. If you have draft documents and the final document ends up changing, but you accidentally provide the draft instead of the final document, that can create a world of hurt for you. And of course, if your papers are stored in electronic format, you can purge the originals. It is really important to keep any notes, anything reflecting reasons for entering into specific transactions, to preserve what they call the institutional memory. So any planning, any structure, minutes, notes. We talk to clients about when they're making directors retreats deductible to make sure that they've got lots and lots of documentation around that so that we can demonstrate why that is a legitimate deductible expense. Now let's get into, I guess, why everyone is really here, which is how to audit proof your business with Receipt Bank. Now we're going to start with a couple of videos that we've got compliments of Receipt Bank. I will ask again if everyone can confirm that the audio is working for us. Hopefully it's coming through.
You didn't go into business to do paperwork.
If you're not hearing the
But
audio,
think about
please
how
let
much
me know.
time you spend sorting through receipts and invoices. There is a better way. Submitting expenses on the go means no more missed deductions and no more Sunday evenings spent entering data. Plus, you'll have real-time visibility into your finances. With Receipt Bank, you just snap a photo of your receipt as soon as you get it. All the key data is extracted and sent straight to your accountant, along with the image. That means no more holding on to your receipts, and your accountant still gets the information they need quickly and easily. Whether you're entertaining clients, out on the road, or buying office supplies, you can stay on top of your expenses with the touch of a button. You can forward digital invoices to your own unique email address, or Receipt Bank can collect them for you, hands-free. There's no need to worry about saving all your receipts in a shoebox. Instead, your documents are stored securely online, safe in the event of natural disaster, audit, or fraud. Paperwork has never been easier. Simply snap and go. Your accountant and receipt bank will take it from there so you can get back to doing what you do best, running your business.
It's a high-level overview of what Receipt Bank is. We're going to get into some more demos of the specific use cases for the software, but I think you guys can get from this short video what a powerful and incredible tool that this is. There's a reason that we have purchased this software in bulk license to be able to provide to 100% of our clients. We think it is a revolutionary tool for ensuring that you've got the documentation in place to survive an audit. The number one reason that we lose audits as accountants is we don't have sufficient documentation, or we cannot access that documentation quickly and effectively. So this tool is the solution to that headache that we've had for years. We encourage everyone to download this app today. You can get a free copy by going to cpa4it.ca, scrolling down and clicking on the link, get your free app. And we will create an account for you. Now, one thing I want to mention, if you go to the Receipt Bank webpage and create your own account, that will create a bit of an issue. They will give you a demo for, I think, 1 week or 2 weeks or something like that. But beyond that, you have to pay. It's over $20 a month for the software, which we provide to you completely free of charge. But once an account is set up with an email address, we cannot use that email address again. So you have to either delete that account or provide an alternative email address. We cannot create another account with the same email address. So important to be aware of that. So let's take a look at some of the other.
You didn't go into business
Aspects of the software. So let's look specifically at how to set up your account. Now, a lot of this we will do for you.
Hi, I'm Matt, and I'm a training
look at
executive at Receipt Bank's London office. Today, I'll be taking you through the first day on your new account and the steps you can take to make sure Receipt Bank is set up perfectly for your business. Let's log into the Receipt Bank website and take a look at your account. If this is the first time you've seen Receipt Bank, then welcome. This is the inbox, the place where your company's purchases will be stored and managed. But first, let's make sure that your account is set up in the right way. We'll be doing this in 2 steps: by importing your chart of accounts to Receipt Bank, and by creating additional users who each have permission to submit and process your company's transactions. Click Account Settings to view and change the fundamental ways that Receipt Bank works with your business. The tabs on the grey sidebar give access to different sections of settings that you can customize, although they may look slightly different depending on which Receipt Bank product you're using. Let's click into the Categories or Maintain List tab to find your chart of accounts. These are currently set to a default pre-made option, but we want to import your own chart of accounts so that new purchases can be coded according to your existing financial records. There are 3 ways to do this: by integrating with an accounting software, by importing a CSV of your existing chart of accounts, or by manually creating a new chart of accounts in Receipt Bank. When you integrate Receipt Bank with another accounting program, will automatically sync your chart of accounts so that they match exactly between the 2 softwares. Do this by clicking on the Integration or General tab of the account settings, and then clicking Choose Software. After you've integrated, come back to the Categories tab to see your chart of accounts imported from your integration. If you can't integrate Receipt Bank with your accounting software, you can still import your chart of accounts as a CSV file. From the Categories tab, click Add a new list via CSV and upload the file containing your chart of accounts. Click to confirm the setup and see each of your accounts instantly rebuilt by Receipt Bank. If you can't source a CSV file containing your chart of accounts, click Add a new list, manual creation. Now type each nominal code that your business regularly uses to record its purchases. After you've set up your categories, whenever transactions are uploaded to Receipt Bank, it can be assigned the correct accounts and codes to keep your financial records accurate. Great. Now that we've set up how we code and describe our purchases, let's add some new users to our account so they can start submitting and processing transactions. Click on the Maintain Users tab of the account settings. Here you'll see a summary of all the people who have access to your Receipt Bank account. If you want to create a new login for someone, click Add a new user and fill in their details. Remember to click Notify User via email or SMS to send an invitation from Receipt Bank to their phone or email inbox. This will contain their login information and links to the website and mobile app. The last thing to be aware of here is the user role setting at the bottom of the window. It defines how much access this new user has in your Receipt Bank account. Basic users can only view and edit items that they've personally uploaded to Receipt Bank, but admin users can view and change anyone's transactions. After a new user has been created, you can change any of their associated details using the Manage buttons on this screen. And that's all you need to get started with Receipt Bank. Try adding some new users to your account, and after they've uploaded some transactions, coding them according to your chart of accounts. Watch the other videos in this series to learn more about submitting and processing items in Receipt Bank.
So one of the most important things to talk about there is the ability to add additional users. So many of you might have a partner or a spouse that you want to be able to give access to be able to upload documents or be able to categorize transactions, which we'll be talking about in a minute. So you can create those separate user accounts. When it comes to the chart of accounts, we will, if we're creating the account for you, we'll create a standard chart of accounts based on our standard chart of accounts automatically. If you are a client of ours that is connected to one of our wholesale QBO accounts, we will also connect to your QBO account. But if for whatever reason you go and create a QBO account down the road, or you want to modify your accounts, again, you can go in and customize that chart of accounts anytime you want, or reconnect to a QBO account anytime that you need to. The other thing to mention is that if you do have multiple companies, which some people do, you should have multiple Receipt Bank accounts. In order for us to do that, just make sure you send a note to us that says, hey, I'd like a one Receipt Bank account for my holdco XYZ and my opco ABC. And we'll make sure to create two separate accounts. We will need two distinct email addresses in order to do that, but we'll create two different accounts for you so that you can be able to upload information. And from within the app, there is the ability to move back and forth between multiple companies. So let's look at actually submitting paperwork. Now you've got your account set up. What's the next step?
Hi, I'm Matt, and I'm a training executive at Receipt Bank's London office. Today, I'll be introducing Receipt Bank and the dedicated ways you can effortlessly upload your financial paperwork to the cloud. So, what is Receipt Bank? It's a platform where you can record and manage all of your business's financial transactions. Whenever you upload pictures of your receipts, invoices, or other financial paperwork, they'll be stored in the cloud where they can be easily processed. And since you've already captured the image and the key document data, the financial records are already complete without having to copy out a handful of old receipts. So let's see this in action. I've just been given this receipt for a company purchase, and I'm not going to put it in my pocket. I'm going to put it in Receipt Bank. Let's open up the Receipt Bank mobile app and quickly take a picture. Now add any details that might help me or my co-workers identify it later, and press submit. And that's all there is to it. I can throw away this piece of paper and get on with my day. I've got peace of mind because that purchase is stored forever in Receipt Bank. I only need to check the mobile app if I need to review or edit information about my purchases. But what if I haven't got a physical copy of the paperwork? Here's an invoice that's been emailed to me. How can I upload this to Receipt Bank? Well, that's easy. Let's forward the email on to my unique @receiptbank.me address. If there's paperwork attached or in the body of the email, it will get extracted by Receipt Bank. And finally, there's the Receipt Bank website. Using my computer, I can log in here to take an in-depth look at all of my previously submitted purchases. Click on the Add Items button at the top of the screen and learn more about the Receipt Bank submission methods. This includes a space where you can drag and drop files directly from your computer, and all of the information you need to get started on the mobile app and email in submission methods. And that's all you need to get started with Receipt Bank. Try logging into the mobile app and the web app and submit your first items today.
So one other thing I would like to mention about uploading and providing information into Receipt Bank, or how to submit paperwork, is one of the things they don't talk about in this training video is a feature that they launched called Fetch. So you also have the ability to connect anything where you have an online account like Best Buy, Amazon, Chapters, anything like that, gas companies, mobile phone companies. All these places have online portals where you can log in and fetch your expenses. So they have built the ability to go and fetch those transactions for you without you having to go and download them or scan and upload them. A great feature. It is prone to misfiring and disconnecting, especially sites that have multi-factor authentication. So periodically going back in to refresh those connections is something that you will need to do if you choose to use those fetch features. The greatest and largest benefit of that fetch feature is the ability to fetch bank statements. One of the biggest issues that we face with our customers is very rarely do our customers actually provide us all 12 or ideally 13 months of bank statements for all the accounts in the right order. If you connect your online bank accounts and online credit cards, Receipt Bank will go and fetch those for you automatically and make them available for our team without us having to bother you or hound you or delay the file in the amount of time it takes us to complete that file because we don't have the information necessary to complete it. So the number one thing I'd like to encourage everybody to do is set this up, go look at the ability to fetch your bank's transactions and be able to pull those in for you. Let's look at how to review the paperwork once it's in there.
Hi, I'm Matt, and I'm a training executive at Receipt Bank's London office. Today I'll be taking you through the Receipt Bank inbox and how you can manage all of your business's paperwork from this singular collaborative space. Let's log into the Receipt Bank web app and take a look at our account. The first thing you see here is your inbox. This is where you receive all of your business's submitted paperwork. You can see a summary of who purchased the item, the supplier they bought it from, and how much they paid for it. If you're working with a large amount of paperwork, use the search and filter options to find transactions that fit your specifications in submitter, supplier, or date range. Let's look at one transaction in more depth. Click on the hyperlink in the type column to access the item details page. We can find an image of the receipt or invoice and all of its associated financial and contextual information. If you need to add or amend any of the details associated with this transaction, click into its field and enter the information. Each field will save automatically when you click elsewhere on the page. Once you're happy with how your transaction has been coded, process it using the black toolbar towards the top of the page. Using these buttons, you can add this transaction to an expense report, download it as a PDF or CSV file, or move it to the archive, a space used to permanently store processed paperwork. You can do all of this whether you're working from the inbox or the item details page. If you're in the inbox, remember that you'll have to select each item using the boxes down the left-hand side of the page before you can make any changes. If your account is integrated with an accounting software, then press the Publish button to send it across. Find out where it will be sent in the Publishing section of the item details page. The transaction will always be stored in the archive section of Receipt Bank if you ever need to find it again. And that's all you need to get started on Receipt Bank. Try logging into the web app today to see if any paperwork has already been submitted to your account.
So one of the greatest benefits, in addition to helping audit proof your business, is eliminating the amount of time it takes you to do your data entry. Because the system has been able to dynamically pull out all the content from the receipt using optical character recognition, that information is available to be used in things like QuickBooks Online and be able to automatically create transactions for you, or to be able to export in a CSV file. And for those of you who are not using things like QuickBooks Online, you can use that to import into our cred manual, create your own pivot tables, The only thing that you do need to do is make sure that you are choosing a category. So there are ways to set up automatic categorization, but you do need to categorize each transaction. So I've got a question here in the chat about how accurate is the OCR. It is incredibly accurate. Pulls out handwritten information, text written. The number one issue that we do sometimes get is when we have US transactions, because it will even recognize what currency it is in many situations based on the information that's on the receipt. So if you make a purchase down in the United States, it's going to recognize it's a purchase from the United States, do it in US dollar. And then from a matching standpoint, that depending upon the currency amount used can be harder to connect to an actual let's say credit card statement where it might be in Canadian dollars as opposed to American dollars, but the actual accuracy is really, really high. How do I split an invoice, for example, a gas bill where I want the percentage associated with the home office? So you have the ability within the transaction to do what they call line items, so you can have many line items that make up one invoice, and you can be able to do that and create those rules. You can also create specific rules, much like you can create rules in QuickBooks Online to be able to do some of that for you. So yes, there is the ability to split individual invoices. And the way to do that would be with the line item amount. Now, that being said, for things like home office and business promotion, those most often used percentage of use categories, our recommendation has always been record those at 100%. Now break those out and in our home office worksheet, then break that out, that percentage of use. But I would actually record these as 100% in Receipt Bank and then break that out in the home office worksheet would be my recommended way of doing that. But the product does have the ability to split that out.
Once you're publishing?
I guess that's really the last thing that we've got on
I'm Matt.
Receipt Bank. I'm happy to go into the product and look specifically more about it if people haven't, because I know that there's probably a lot of questions specifically about this tool. One of the things is you can access virtually all of the features from the mobile app as well. And these demos that we have here don't really illustrate the mobile app all that well. And it's hard for me to demonstrate that here as well right now. But the mobile app is probably where you're going to be using this tool the most. The number one thing is that we're going to take the drudgery of bookkeeping and enable it to be as simple as taking a picture of a photo. But that does require you to create a habit. So we're going from data entry to a new habit of taking a picture. And it does take, I think someone once said it takes 21 times to create a habit. You've got to repeat something 21 times before it actually becomes formed in your brain as something that you just do automatically. So one of the things I do recommend to people is creating some sort of reminder for the first month to just say, hey, don't forget to take a picture of your receipts today, and to do this on a daily basis. Yes, you can use something like a Fujitsu Scan Snap scanner to bulk scan everything at the end of the month. But if you do that, your likelihood of getting into it and coming back and doing that is going to decrease. If you can literally get in the habit of when you're at the coffee shop waiting for the coffee to be made, which I get isn't happening right now, you take a picture of that receipt and upload it. It's done automatically. If you log into your online accounts like Amazon and Bell and Rogers and have those documents automatically fetched, it's just going to happen without you even thinking about it. And that's the number one thing I want to get people to do, is learn how to do their bookkeeping without even thinking about it. Does Receipt Bank organize receipts per tax year? So it doesn't natively organize them per tax year, but you have the ability to search by vendor, by amount, by date. So let's say that you have multiple tax years. You've been using Receipt Bank for 5 years, and you now want to prepare your 2019 tax year. What you would do is you would do a search for and let's assume you're not using something like QuickBooks Online. You would do a search for all the information. Let's assume it's, for now, it's just a fiscal year end that matches a calendar year end. So you would just do a search from January 1 to December 31st, and then you would export that as a CSV, and then you would either create a pivot table or you would import that into our CRED manual, and you're done. You have all the transactions by that individual year. If you are using something like QuickBooks Online, of course, it's going to actually create those transactions, and then in QuickBooks Online, you would match them to the bank. One of the things it's got that it doesn't talk about again in these training videos is the version we have, which is the highest end version of the product, has all the bells and whistles you could want. The highest end version of this product has a feature called Match, which means if a transaction is in QuickBooks Online already and it finds that same receipt in Receipt Bank, it will show up in your match column and it won't duplicate that. The product is very, very smart from an aspect of identifying duplicates. It's also very, very accurate with dates, with one caveat. If you are doing your receipt uploading in a timely manner within the last 3 months, the date format is incredibly accurate. When you start doing things 2 or 3 years after the fact, you start to degrade the accuracy of dates, because 03/03/2019, well, that's a bad example. 09/03/2019 could either be March 9th, 2019, or it could be September 3rd, 2019. But if you're doing that within the last 3 months, its accuracy is very, very good. Now we've got a question in the Q&A. Let me see if I can pop over to that. Bear with me a second here. Trying to get there. What is the difference between Receipt Bank and QuickBooks? Which one would we prefer? Which one should we prefer? So Receipt Bank and QuickBooks are completely different softwares. It's not one or the other. Receipt Bank is a OCR document management tool ideally suited for receipt capture. QuickBooks Online is a financial management software. So Receipt Bank does not have any format for debits and credits. It's not a double entry accounting financial management software. It's going to export that information in a table format or a CSV, and there's not two sides to each entry. It's just a list of transactions. Now, many of you know we have lots of clients who use our CRED manual, which is not a double entry based system. And so workarounds can be done for the type of clients that we deal with, which are small owner managed type of businesses. QuickBooks is a full general ledger financial management software, which means it has a balance sheet. Every transaction that is entered is got a debit and a credit. It's got the ability to reconcile bank accounts, reconcile corporate credit cards, write checks from the software, all the things that you would expect to find in a full-fledged accounting software. The two tools work together. So you don't have to have QuickBooks to take advantage of the features and benefits of Receipt Bank, but the two combined are an unstoppable force. It does also work with Xero if you were using Xero, so it can be that connector with many of the financial management softwares. If you're using Wave, Receipt Bank is actually the built-in tool used within Wave, so it's quite a powerful tool. Can it read manually, like handwritten receipts? Yes, it can read handwritten receipts. It is, like I say, it's I remember looking at optical character recognition literally 10, 15 years ago. And back then it was pretty good, but nowhere near the level of accuracy needed to be reliable from an accounting standpoint. The quality of the optical character recognition that comes out of Receipt Bank is absolutely incredible. Let me, so I guess we've, I'd love to, if you have more questions, looks like we've got a couple more. I'm just returning to contract work after 25 years. Using software is all new since then. How do I find out what other tools, worksheets, etc., are needed to ensure CPA for IT can manage my year-end reporting? I'd say the best way to do that is have a conversation with your individual account manager. Usually with every one of our clients, we do have an onboarding session where they talk to you about your business, the specific tools. There are so many tools out there that you can use. Literally dozens of new apps being created every single day. Now, what works for you and your business is really going to depend on your individual circumstances. Some of our clients just use a spreadsheet, and that's sufficient. Some of our clients use tools like QuickBooks Online. Some of our clients use a whole myriad of tools like QuickBooks Online and then a whole bunch of apps. Some of our clients use Wave accounting. Some of our clients use desktop ads. You know, there's a wide array of tools, and it's finding the right solution for you. Like, how technology savvy are you? Are you in a remote area and going to need to be working offline? There's a whole bunch of questions that go into that. Now, there's some questions here about how much does Receipt Bank charge. It's completely free of charge for any one of our clients. If you're even considering working with us, we'll give you 1 year of the account completely free of charge, because we believe that much in the tool. The pricing is on their website. I think it starts at $20 a month and goes up to $60 a month, depending upon the different version. We are giving you the full bells and whistles, highest version of the software, with no limits on the number of documents that you can process. Another question here is, can we use for multiple businesses with one Receipt Bank account? Now, we mentioned that earlier. You would not want to do that. You would want to have a separate Receipt Bank account for each business. Technically, you probably could, and then, especially if you're using QuickBooks, try and do different classes, but that's going to create a headache that's not worth having, especially considering we give you these accounts for free. So we can create multiple accounts for you. If you've got multiple operating companies, we can create one for each one. Just the big caveat, we'll need a separate email account for each of those. Who else will have access to your Receipt Bank? So we will, as your accounting firm that we create, will have access to that, and that's it. And of course, if you leave us and don't want to work with us anymore, then we can relinquish access, and that access can be removed. Of course, that will mean that you have to pay for the license yourself, but our access can be removed at any time. As well, you can also just download the information. You can download all your reports, export the CSVs, and close down the account if you don't want to use it. Okay, I think that's the rest of the questions. So we do have a couple of wrap-up points just around the actual audit process. And that's, just some of the warning signs for when an audit has gone off the rails. So when the auditors start commenting on things, missing information or inconsistent documents, they're asking the same question over and over again. If there are any questions relating to credibility, these are big, massive warning signs. And of course, if the scope starts to creep, they start asking for additional information that wasn't in the original request, then we can see that there's issues. And these are warning signs that this could extend into a much greater issue than is currently at place. So really, and again, signs of confusion, skepticism, fixation on irrelevant details or documents, not engaged, unexplained gaps. So one of the things too is to know and understand that, when you're dealing with these auditors, there are things that you can do to mitigate some of this risk. Bring in reinforcements. Make sure you've got someone who's knowledgeable and understands the process there to help you. Again, for our clients, if you're on a prepayment plan, you're getting our audit representation protection completely free of charge. If you're not on a prepayment plan, you can purchase that audit insurance for $300 a year, which means that if you go through an audit, we will be there to hold your hand and provide the support you need, and there's no additional charge to you whatsoever. It's also important that you make sure that you're setting the agenda, and recognize that you can go up the ladder. You can ask to speak with their supervisors. You can also push them to identify their areas of concern, and to even provide information summarizing what's been done to date, what information is provided. Now, again, my number one caveat here is treat these auditors with respect, and they'll treat you with respect. That's the number one thing I do recommend. Don't get into any competitive situations, but you do have options. You do have processes that you can go through. And one of the last things that is really important to understand is that beyond the audit process, there are still options. There are appeals, which in theory is a fresh look at it. In practice, it's rare that appeals will actually overturn previous judgments unless there's new information brought to date. They can vacate a reassessment without internal consultation. Again, these things are rare, and they often involve separate advisors who are going to be looking into things in a more detailed way. We have found ourselves that individually, it's not uncommon for the auditors to be more junior and for more senior advisors to have more information and more knowledge, and to provide what some people deem to be more fair results. But you have to also be aware of the law of bureaucratic inertia, which could just, encourage them to just support what's already been done and just kick it down the road. And so there are issues and stuff to be aware of. The number one advice we have for you is keep your documentation organized. And number two, work with a knowledgeable professional. And number three, respond in a timely fashion. That's really it for today. We have literally a couple minutes left to open it up for Q&A if there's any more questions that we didn't answer. Again, if you want to get a copy of the free software, you go to our website, cpa4it.ca, and click on the link to get your free software. I'll show you how to do that now. I think I will. Let's see if we can get this up and running. Pull this over here. So this is our website here. We've got a free great guide right now on how to pay less tax. I can tell you if you're a client of ours, we're already doing these strategies for you. But here's the link to getting your free app. So you click on this link here. And there's be some more information about what Receipt Bank is on this page. Links to some of the videos we saw earlier today. You fill in this form and we will create a free account for you. And we will link it to any wholesale QBO accounts that we do already have for you. If you're looking at combining either QBO or Xero with Receipt Bank and don't already have an account, or are paying for retail pricing on that, we do get wholesale pricing, and you can get a better discount than it would be in paying retail. So we've got a couple of questions here about whether Receipt Bank is hack proof. I don't know if anything is hack proof. I was once sitting on a plane with a security expert coming back from San Jose, California. And he basically told me that there's no such thing as hack proof, especially in this era of quantum computing, which is eminent. Nothing is hack proof, but they invest a lot of money on security. They've been through a lot of vulnerability tests. To become an app partner for QBO and Xero, there is a process that they have to go through to demonstrate a certain level of security. Is it necessary to do backups of your data in Receipt Bank, or just Receipt Bank back up the data? And is it encrypted? Yes, backed up. Yes, encrypted. These are sort of basics. Does that mean that you should just rely solely on that backup? I wouldn't. I always do backups of my backups. Redundancy is the best thing that you can possibly do. So what I recommend is periodically going in and downloading your receipts. You can download a PDF of all of your receipts. You select a time frame. What I can also encourage you to do is download that on an annual basis so that you have one PDF document with all of your receipts in it. And you can also download the CSV, which will have the link to the individual receipt. But when you do download the CSV, recognize while there will be a link to the image, that image is then still stored on their portal. To get the actual image off, you have to download the PDF. So yes and no to answer your questions. Excellent. Again, if there's any other questions, you're welcome. Or people want to see further into the product, please let me know. We got 4 minutes left, so I might even bear with me a second here. Let's see if I can get in, and I'd like to show you the fetching feature because it is such a powerful tool. If I can. Just bear with me a second. Sorry guys, just bear with me a second. Okay. Let's bring this back over here for a second. So you can see this is looking into the tool itself. You can see there's no documents in process. There's 24 documents to review, 112 documents that are ready. You can see your sales. So you do have the ability to do sales invoice as well as expense receipts, as well as bank transactions. So bank transactions is, like I said, one of the features I would like to add. So there is the ability now to fetch bank statements. So we can go in here and do add. They moved things on me. We've added a new feature here. Of course, this is always the way of live demos. Don't do live demos. List of supported banks. So we have to add a bank account first. Let's do TD. And test. Ooh. There, I apologize. I was going on the wrong section. So it's under connections, bank, add a bank feed. So you've got to accept this lawyer speak. Then you can do whatever you want. And then you would just sign in like you're signing in to your normal bank. It is doing a manual fetch, which, like I said, does run into issues potentially with multi-factor authentication. But if you make sure you log in every couple of months and make sure your multi-factor authentication is working, it does work seamlessly to pull that information over. And depending on your bank, it doesn't break that often. So I guess that's pretty much it for today. Again, I want to thank everyone for joining us. If you have any other questions, feel free to email me or follow in. Like I said, this is a great tool. It's normally not the cheapest tool. Let me show you what the pricing is normally. But for our clients, again, completely free of charge. And even those who are just considering using our services, we'll give you a 1-year license completely free of charge, no strings, no obligation. At the end of that process, you can either turn it off or close it down or take over the ownership of the account. So I apologize. I said $20. It starts at $15 a month for one user, limited to 50 receipts. It doesn't give you all the bells and whistles. You've got a business plan here, which gives you some more of the bells and whistles. But our premium account, which is what we're giving you guys, has multiple users, no limit. So it's not even limited to 3,000 receipts or invoices, which you'd have a hard time surpassing, but there's no limit. And most importantly, it's giving you all of these extra features that aren't available in the basic or business plus versions. So you're getting the highest package worth $62.50 a month, completely free of charge. So hopefully that's a tremendous value add and a great tool to help you mitigate any audit risks. So again, thank you everyone for joining us live, and have a great day and stay safe and healthy. Bye for now.